Good evening, Ms. Shalini. Shalini ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, good evening,
Dr.
sir.
Saru?
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing good.
Shalini ma'am, are we good to go?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Biju sir.
Good evening, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Please, let's introduce our moderator, Shalini ma'am.
Sure, sir. Sure.
Thank you.
Ms. Shalini Shinoyam, MA in English Literature, B. Ed. B. Lias, Diploma in Management of Learning Disability, Diploma in Career Counseling. Presently Vice Principal of Crescent Public School, Chalkudi. As resource person for COE, Tiruvananthapuram and Library Science, conducted several CBC online training sessions and CBPs on school libraries, moderated sessions, and has been panelist in various educational sessions. Passionate about books and reading, she has contributed articles and reviews in e-magazines, including article on prevention and management of substance misuse under the theme Education for Health and Wellness in CBC Academic Branch and House Biannual Educational e-magazine. Simbasek July, December 2022. Awarded the Extra Mile Educator 2022 for dedicated service in the field of education and Certificate of Honor for rendering selfless service as moderator. At Bharat Sahadaya International Educators Conclave held at Tiruvananthapuram on December 28, 2022. Conferred District Governor's Excellence Award 2022-23 for exemplifying high ethical standards and dignity in teaching career by Chalkudi Central Rotary on January 2nd, 2023. Hearty welcome, Ms. Shalini. Please proceed.
Thank you, Biju sir. Shalini ma'am, please proceed.
Thank you so much, sir, for the very kind words. A very pleasant evening to everyone. Greetings from Extra Mile. Welcome everyone to this insightful webinar hosted by Extra Mile, which is an exclusive platform created by founder of BTAC, Dr. Abdul Salam Sir, for providing online and offline training. I'm Shalini Shinoy, your moderator today, and together we are going to explore practical approaches, tips, and collaboration between educators and learners to enhance the entire exam preparation journey. As we embark on this journey of learning and growth, I take a moment to express my gratitude to Dr. Abdul Salam Sir for giving me this opportunity to moderate this webinar on the topic Mastering Exams Life Cycles. And warmest regards to all the participants who joined us on this fruitful journey to find out creative ways to ensure best performances of diverse learners in the exams. So before we begin today's session, there are a few things that I would like to brief about. Any query during the session can be conveyed through the meeting chat box. In order to have an interactive experience, you may clear your doubts by asking questions. Kindly use the virtual hand raise button and wait for your name to be called out for asking your query. The participants will have the opportunity to receive certificate only after filling up the certificate and feedback form. Link will be shared at the end of the session. Kindly stay tuned till the end of the session. Let me now invite Dr. Abdul Salam Sir, Principal of Vibjor High, Bangalore, Assessor of National Accreditation Board for Education and Training, Government of India. He's a CBSE resource person and master trainer, founder and CEO of BTAC and Extra Mile. I welcome you, sir, for presidential address. Over to you, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Shalini ma'am. And Dr. Sarup, very happy to see both again on a different platform. new year, new resolution. Thank you everybody for joining. In fact, everybody is so busy with exams and all, but we believe that this session is going to be very, very useful for everyone because we have with us none other than Dr. Swaroop Datta. So you will not definitely waste your time today. You will take away a lot of things from Dr. Swaroop Datta. So on behalf of all the educators who have joined, I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Swaroop Datta for offering this session. Along with Shalini ma'am and Biju sir, we will continue this journey for enhancing our realm of knowledge and expertise so that students will greatly benefit. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful session from Dr. Swaroop Datta. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have another educator who has a passion for fostering academic growth and is the co-founder of BTAC. He's the principal of Gokulam Public School, Trivandrum. I cordially invite Mr. Biju S. Pillai, sir, to articulate his views and facilitate the gathering.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, respected dignitaries, BTAG founder Dr. Abdul Salam sir, Dr. Swaroop Datta sir, moderator ma'am, and all other dignitaries. As for the quiet, as Abdul Salam sir told, it's a exam time, and even my school is an CBSE examination center, and I quite often I could see there are 2-3 types of children who are getting panic at the time of getting the question paper. Just before entering the examination hall, children are very seriously discussing about the unexpected questions and making a panic situation. So there are many situations where children get tensed, and all of a sudden, as they get the question paper, they will be in a different situation. So all these situations, how we can tackle, and moreover, to reduce all these tensions, the CBSE day by day are thinking how we can resolve all these problems. And newly I heard that from 9 to 12, they are going to have open book session also. And a trial run is going to happen in the month of November. That means coming 10th and 9th to 12th will be having a session like that also. In the month of November, a trial run will be there with open book examinations. So let us see how we can resolve all these tensions related to the exam point of view. So let us hear to the great personality today. We have Swaroop Datta sir. So welcome you, sir, and welcome all educators to this platform. I remain. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Today, we have a versatile resource person who has exhibited proficiency in diverse fields like education, research, training, medicine, manufacturing, quality assurance, brand management, and IT. He's received Singhania Education Excellence Award 2022. He has trained over 15,000 corporate employees, 60,000 teachers, and has recently launched his company, Best Career Book, which is meant to provide career counseling, consultancy, and training services. He's the first school principal in India to become a master black belt in Lean Six Sigma quality management system, certified law of attraction master practitioner, professional English trainer, mentor CIR Global, mentor for medical sciences, Vikram Sarabhai Science Foundation. He's the co-author of Homeopathy in the Light of Modern Science with his father, Dr. A.C. Datta sir. He's also received Best Pragati Award. He's the member of CBSE Affiliation Review Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you our esteemed resource person, Dr. Swaroop Datta sir, Principal, MSM English School and Junior College, Malkapur, Maharashtra, Zonal Training Coordinator, Master Trainer of CBSE COE, Pune and Trivandrum, CBSE City Coordinator for Buldana District, and Founder President of Buldana Sahodaya School Complex for today's webinar. He's well equipped to guide us through the intricacies of mastering exam life cycle. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Swarup Datta, sir. I request you to take over the proceeding for the evening. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Abdul Salam for inviting me on this new platform. And greetings to all the attendees today. I hope we will have an interactive session. And today the topic is, very, very interesting because it's about examination. And we are all going through this, the patch of examination that's happening right now. So board exams are going on, schools are gearing for their own examinations. So I thought of presenting this topic where I'll give an overview about how the examination system, or what should be the life cycle of an examination system, and how we can ensure that the performance of students of different types, different abilities can do, better. So I'll share my screen with you first. Give me a moment for that. Yes, I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes. Sir.
So the topic for today is Mastering Exam Lifecycle, a Creative Approach. So discovering the innovative strategies for optimizing exam performance and supporting diverse learners. So today we'll explore pre-exam, during exam, and post-exam activities. Now, when I'm conducting this session, it's not about only the board exams. It's about all the examinations from the very first level in school to the board exam. Now, when we talk about examinations, we have to understand and look at examinations or assessment from a different perspective altogether. So first, we have to understand, whether we are a student, we are teachers, educators, that the future of the world is in my classroom today. That's the first thing. So whenever we are teaching, assessment is a part of the teaching learning cycle. And as we move ahead, we have to understand that how the world is going to be tomorrow. The people who are going to shape that world, they are right now in my classroom. The second thing is how the future is going to be like, because without trying to understand the future, the examination and assessment loses its meaning. So the future, how is it going to be like? Trend analyzers normally say that 85% of jobs that will exist in 2030 haven't been invented yet. And 65% of children in primary school today will work in jobs that don't exist yet. So the question is then, what we are preparing the children in school for? Because unless we know what we are preparing the children for, the teaching learning process and the assessment will lose its meaning. So we are assessing for something, but for what? What the future is going to be like, what jobs these children are going to be working in. So we have to understand also one thing, what are the jobs that are at risk? So Martin Ford, the futurist and author, explains that jobs that are most at risk are those which are on some level routine, repetitive, and predictable. So something that is very, very routine and repetitive and predictable, these jobs will be soon going to machines or robots. Artificial intelligence is already taking over in many domains. So repetitive jobs will not be done by humans any longer. So what jobs will be secured from robots and automation? That's the question, right? The first job that involves genuine creativity, such as being an artist, being a scientist, developing new business strategies. So whatever involves creativity, these jobs are going to stay. So my question is now then how to prepare the children for these creative jobs and what to assess, how to assess. we have been conducting assessments and examinations in a routine format where we were not really checking the creativity of the child. We were checking about, checking the memory of the child, how much the child remembers, and that was the examination system in the last century, or even in the early part of the 21st century. But right now, you have seen in the last few years, with artificial intelligence dominating the world so much, in many ways, the routine education system is falling behind. The second thing is we have to understand the second area, apart from being being creative, is occupations that involve building complex relationships with people. For example, nurses or business role that requires you to build close relationship with clients. So no matter what, relationship building, human to human interaction is going to be very, very crucial. So at school level, we also need to ensure that when children are being educated or being assessed, are we really checking this ability of the child? And third and most important area is also, jobs that are highly unpredictable. For example, if you're a plumber or an electrician who is called out to handle emergencies in different locations, these jobs are going to stay. So 3 areas which the futurists predict is going to stay is creative approach of the learner. Second thing is, of course, the human-to-human interaction, that is communication of the human communication, I would say that way. And third is, of course, the unpredictable jobs and something that requires skills. So we are talking about shift to competency-based teaching, learning, and assessment. And we all have spoken about that on different platforms, that what is competency-based education. But again, just as a reminder, I would say that competency-based education is more like checking the skill of the child instead of, asking the child to reproduce knowledge. So competency-based learning or assessment will promote critical and creative thinking aligned to 21st century classrooms, shifting traditional assessments to competency-focused, tracking students' progress comprehensively and frequently, and designing tools and resources to acquire learning outcome. So we need to design the resources to ensure that the learning outcomes that we intend to drive in the child is met. So one of the ways, of course, is reducing the curriculum, the core essentials to minimize rote learning. This effort has already been taken up by NCERT. The reduction of the volume of the syllabus is going on. Then, on the other hand, promoting a sport-integrated, art-integrated learning in classroom for holistic development of the child is also in progress. Encouraging 21st century skills. There are a lot of skills that we call as 21st century skills. The 4 C's, the literacy of media, digital literacy, and then, of course, the FLIPS, flexibility, leadership, initiative, all these skills that we talk about as 21st century skills, these have to be driven in the child and they need to learn the 21st century skills. Now, the question is, if we are talking about 21st century skills, teaching learning process is on one side. What about the assessment? Now, assessment, when we talk about assessment, we have to understand that assessment enables students to provide evidence of what it is that they know and can do. So the first thought about examination or assessment is not to find out what the child has not learned. It's to find out what the child already knows or has learned. So the whole approach of examining a child or assessing a child should be shifted from trying to, get to the bottom of the fact that how much the child has learned and what the child has not learned. Instead of that, try to understand what every child has learned something, right? So what is that and how we can assess that? So this evidence is then used to make inferences regarding students' knowledge and understanding around the academic content, which serves as the source of learning for activities that follow. So this is the thought process that should be behind assessment. Now, when we talk about assessment and we're designing examinations, question papers, we need to ensure a few things. So what are these few things? The validity and reliability of the examination is very important. So it is critical that assessment items that are used to make these inferences assesses the critical learning outcomes that they are supposed to be assessing. So validity is the assessment assessing what exactly the assessment is meant to assess. So are we really checking what we are supposed to check, or we are checking something else? And the reliability is how consistent is that assessment. If the child is appearing for 5 assessments, are the scores going to be, related to one another, or it's going to be far apart? So that's the very important question. So if we are having an examination system, or question papers are designed in such a way that you conduct 5 examinations and scores vary greatly. Once the child is getting 20 out of 100, sometimes he's getting 50 out of 100, sometimes they're getting 80 out of 100. So that means the tests are not reliable. It's not really checking the level of the child, because whatever assessments we are conducting, these 2 factors are very, very important. That is high validity and high reliability. So without validity and reliability, the examination will lose its sense. And of course, in order to produce items, by items I mean the questions, that should be fair and are in good quality, teachers and item writers should follow some basic guidelines. So item writing is basically framing of questions. So as and when I refer to the word item or item writing, it refers to framing of questions. So as you can see in the picture over here, the high validity and high reliability is you're hitting the bullseye consistently. And then the next picture, the second one that we will have over here, has high validity but low reliability. The validity is high, but the arrows are not consistent. It's all over the board. Then the third picture over here, we have a low validity. It's not actually hitting the target. It's measuring something else. It's going outside the board. So the validity is low and the reliability is high because consistently it has hit at the same place. The target is hit, but the target is not what the target was supposed to be. Standards, and it at times shows shortfalls of a child. But both require criteria, users measurement, and both are evidence driven. So now we have to understand there are 3-4 terms to deal with. You are giving and assigning a particular grade or score to a child. Examination is a written form of demonstration, and test is just a check to understand how much and what the child has learned. It does not check skill, it does not check attitude, it just does not check the aptitude of the child. Now, we have also spoken about at times, the assessment for, as, and of learning. So assessment for learning and assessment of learning, these 2 were most prominent in the last decade. Assessment of learning is the typical examination system that we have been following for ages, giving a pen paper test, checking how much the child knows. Assessment for learning, this is assessment, formative assessment, when you are checking the child as the child learns. So when we are talking about a formative assessment, we are simultaneously teaching and checking the learning of the child through different methods. And this formative assessment is called assessment for learning. And what is assessment as learning? Assessment as learning occurs when the student reflect on and monitor their progress to inform their future learning goals. Right? So the child is becoming a reflective learner. Child is taking an assessment, reflecting, working on the competencies, and reappearing for the assessment, just like the child, plays a video game. He takes the level, tries to play that level. If it's through, he goes to the next level. If it's not through, he tries it all over again. So that is assessment as learning. And we are now, in the present moment, focusing more on assessment as learning, because assessment should not be just a check of learning, but assessment should be a learning by itself. And of course, in the classroom, when the teaching learning process is going on, assessment for learning is very important. So we need to know the role of an assessment framework. So far, whatever I was talking about in the last, maybe 10-15 minutes, we were talking about the theoretical background about assessment, examination, test. Now we need to take a closer look at what we need to know, practically. So the role of assessment framework for an item writing is very, very important. We talk about learning objectives, learning outcomes, competencies. But in the schools, I've seen most of the school, they do not talk about assessment framework. So we need to understand what is that. Then we need to understand characteristics and development of high quality assessment instruments. So what are the things that we can do to assess a child? What are the instruments for that? What are the guidelines for writing good items, good questions? So how to frame good questions, and including the construction of marking guides. So apart from framing the right questions, you need to frame the marking guidelines as well. So we need to now go through something that is called key stages in test development. Now, just to look at it in a very uncomplicated manner, look at these 6 steps. The first one is development of assessment framework, including test blueprint. So we need to frame an assessment framework. To understand what is an assessment framework, if you go to the competency-based tab of CBSE, they have uploaded an assessment framework developed jointly by British Council, Alpha Plus, and CBSE. And I strongly recommend all educators to go through that assessment framework as well, so that you have a very clear understanding that in what direction we are walking. Then we will talk about the second stage, that is development of test items, framing of questions. Number 3 is, after you frame the questions, how to review the questions. Number 4, translation of the test items. Now we are talking about multilingualism in classrooms. Now, when we are talking about multilingualism in classroom, can we bring in multilingualism in the question paper as well? That's another question. And of course, then finalization of the test items and development of the final test instrument or question paper. So you see that we are not straight away jumping into the question paper. The schools normally have that practice. They give the job of framing a question paper to the subject teacher. The subject teacher takes up a book or goes online, finds out questions, put that on the question paper, and they assign the marks to it, and the question paper is ready. Now this is a very I would say very crude process of framing a question paper. Assessment is such an important task. You have to understand that the child is studying in that class for an entire year. The whole the goal of a child when studying in a particular class is to ensure that he meets the assessment criteria, does well in the assessment, and the amount of time that we spend in teaching a child, if we do not spend enough time in testing a child or framing a question paper that will rightly test the child, our entire 1 year of effort of teaching and learning has fallen apart. We need to be very, very particular about understanding this thing, that framing of a question paper is not a 2 hours job. It requires much more understanding, knowledge, and we need to go into the depth of framing question papers if we want to assess the child properly. Otherwise, as long as question papers are framed in the wrong way, as long as we do not understand what we are trying to check in a child, what the child is planning to do in future, we do not understand the job market, what we are preparing the child for, if we do not design our papers based on that, if we do not really check the competencies that will be required in the job market, we are driving the child by framing an irresponsible question paper towards the same direction of rote learning. So as long as we frame irresponsible question papers without giving a second thought that how it should actually be, we are driving the education system of our country again towards rote learning. No matter how many times people attend NEP and NCF sessions, it will really not be implemented in the practical way. So key stages in test development, there are these 11 steps that we need to understand. And I'm not telling that you do it straight away from this year. Maybe, it requires a little more time, but still we are in the late February right now. 23rd, 24th Feb is not too late. Even if you have not done it this way, you can definitely have a second thought and see what you can add to your present year's question paper and assessment system. So the first one is development of the assessment framework. Number 2 is development of test items or blueprint or table of specifications. Number 3 is Item development as per guidelines and standards. So questions are developed as per the central guideline of the assessment framework. Number 4 is peer review of items. So question paper is being reviewed by another teacher. Number 5 is moderation of items or answer keys and marking scheme. So this moderation is again a very important, stage of, or I would say level of setting the question paper. Unless you moderate a question paper properly, a lot of errors will be there, and we will deviate from the objective of, competency checking. Number 6 is selection of items or questions which adhere to the quality standards. Now we have to see the questions that we have framed are, these questions, does it pass through the quality requirement? When we're talking about quality, we cannot really compromise on quality and keep talking about quality on education platforms and attend webinars. And when we are framing question paper, we are not paying attention that what are the quality requirement of a particular question and how it will pass through that requirement. Number 7 is double translation by 2 independent translators and reconciliation by another one, if possible. Again, I'm telling, it requires manpower. It's not the job of one person, but as and how the school decides, I'm just giving what is expected. But depending on the manpower, depending on how many teachers you have in your school, you can design and customize this. But the understanding over here is that when we are framing a question paper, it's very important to translate it to understand that, what it intends to check and what a reader, when he's reading it, understands in his or her mother tongue or language one, that the child is, supposed to, let's say if the child is in Maharashtra, Marathi is the language one. If he's in Kerala, Malayalam, and things like that. So if I'm reading a question paper in English, how will I interpret that and translate that in the mother tongue? Is the question going to change its shape and form? That also needs to be checked. And then finalization of the question paper. Number 9 is development of test instruments or question paper as a blueprint. Number 10 is quality review and check of the question paper. And number 11 is translation of common instruction across question papers. So even the common instructions that are given across the question papers, like fill in the blanks or attempt any 2 of the following. So these also require some sort of translation to understand if it really, telling what it is supposed to tell. Next. Assessment framework, what is that? That's the question. So the development of an assessment framework is an iterative process which takes place step by step. The work on assessment framework should begin before the items are developed. So this assessment framework should start even before the question papers are being framed, so that the framework is available in a draft form to guide the team of item writers. So the school, with the help of the principal and the HODs, they need to frame an assessment framework so that the ones who are framing the question papers during the examination time, they adhere to a central guideline. And this process cannot happen just overnight. It has to happen it has to be embedded as a system in the school. Now, those who are aware of the SQAA, you will see that the level 4, in most of the SQAA level 4, it has been mentioned very clearly that the process has to be embedded in the school system. We cannot just, just to meet a particular criteria, we cannot just do it just to keep an evidence. All of a sudden we decide that, okay, we need this assessment framework, so let's develop one just before the examination and, roll it out. And whether we adhere to it or we do not adhere to it does not matter. So that is just to keep an evidence. But really, if you want the assessment framework to do its job, then you have to do it, in the beginning of the academic year, if possible, and then frame the assessment objectives, frame the assessment framework, and then the teachers will start framing a question bank for the upcoming assessments and keep that question bank, and the entire question bank will be developed following the central assessment framework. And it's also important that the framework is seen as a work in progress, flexible enough to be modified in the light of teaching learning process and learning outcome. So it's not like once you've framed the assessment framework, it's a very rigid one. It should be a flexible one. And as we move ahead in the teaching learning process, we can make changes in that assessment framework. So assessment framework is a description and discussion about what an assessment intends to measure. It also helps them to understand what the assessment results mean. The framework includes the definition of a domain, the area of learning that is being measured. Now, I'll give an example and make you understand very simple, in a simple way. We are trying to check, let's say, if a child knows how to ride a bicycle. Now, in framing of the question, if we put like this, write an essay on how to ride a bicycle. The child, when he's writing an essay, does it anywhere prove that the child knows how to ride a bicycle? It's a pure theoretical knowledge. He will write very clearly. If he's good in English, we are checking his English knowledge. We are checking his knowledge of writing an essay effectively. But we are not really checking that whether the child knows how to ride a bicycle. So our assessment or questioning should be such that we can really check that really the child knows how to ride a bicycle or not. It can be a practical check by giving a bicycle to the child and asking the child to ride the bicycle. It can be presentation of a video where the child is riding a bicycle and attaching it and submitting that video to the child teacher as an evidence. So here we are talking about competency-based assessment again, where we are going to give the child, the flexibility of showcasing his learning his way. And the questions or items needs to be developed in that way. And we also need to be very clear about the domain that we are checking. Now, even if it's a pen paper test, let's say we are not developing a practical based question paper, but even if it's a pen paper test, we will check what this test or question intends to find out. And is it really checking that, or is it checking something else? Is it checking a different skill altogether? Now we talk about what the assessment framework covers. It covers which aspect of the domain we are going to check. It covers the proportion of questions. How many questions will be there at what level of Bloom's taxonomy? The responses or item formats. In what way the child will respond, and how the result of the assessment may be reported. So these are something that the assessment framework is supposed to cover. Now, importance of assessment framework for item development. A good test instrument or question paper refers to a question paper in the context of school-based assessment, depends on a clear idea around the purpose of assessment, its outcomes and domains, sometimes referred to as subject or learning area, are to be included in the assessment. So when we are checking if the child knows, let's say, to read a question and understand the meaning of that question and apply that logic in a present scenario, are we framing the question to check that logical reasoning of the child, or are we putting a question that just tests if the child has mugged up a formula and can write that formula on the paper? So we are not supposed to, give a problem sum to check if the child knows a formula. When we give a problem sum, we are trying to understand, can the child break that problem, decompose that problem, look at individual components, analyze the problem, and then come up with a solution. Here, we are not concerned about memory of the child in terms of the formula of mathematics that he needs to apply. So at times when we are checking these things, the formula can be even given to the child that you can apply this formula to solve this problem. And then again, see how the child is able to decompose the problem and solve it. So I hope I've been able to make it very clear that when we set a question, we need to understand beforehand that what we are checking. When we are checking, does the child know how to write an essay? That time we will not check, the spelling of the child. We are checking the child knows how to write an essay or not. So we need to more focus on the content of the essay, the format of the essay, and things like that. Next. So essential components of assessment framework is we have to understand that who is being assessed. The next is what is being assessed. Just naming the domain is not enough. And then number 3 is outline the domain content area or content category or subdomains. And 4, outline the competencies to be measured. So here, when we are framing the assessment framework, we keep in our mind who is the child whom we are trying to assess. Now, often you will see when you frame a question paper, you read the question paper, you as a teacher will be very convinced that, a few children of your class will not be able to solve this question paper. At the same time, as a teacher, you will also be convinced that few children of your class will be solving this question paper very easily, and they require a more difficult level question paper. But since you're framing one single question paper, it becomes very difficult to cater to all the three types. So here again, the question will come, do we have one single question paper for the whole class, or we can plan off setting different types of question papers for the different types of learners. Now, when we talk about competencies or specific skills, we also refer to as processes, cognitive domains, or aspects. These are the ways of thinking or intellectual approaches that develop as students become increasingly proficient in a domain. So as and how the student becomes proficient in a domain, they develop competencies. So similar to the content areas of the domain, the competencies to be addressed in the assessment needs to be outlined and explained in the framework. So when we are making a framework, we are not only talking about what type of learner it is, or he or she is, we are also talking about what type of competencies is expected from that learner and how we will check that competency through this question that we are framing. Now, once the assessment framework is in place, now let me just tell you, this is a 1 hour webinar, maybe 1 hour, few minutes it will go and extend. But whatever I'm talking about is not something that you can cover in 1 hour. This is something that requires maybe complete minimum 2 full days of training. And basically, when I take this assessment training, it's a 2-day module. But what I've done is brought out the main points of that assessment module and sharing with you all. So each point that we are talking about right now, it can be spoken about for at least 1 or 2 hours so that you get a thorough understanding. But what I'm trying to do here is just give a food of thought, food for thought. And you are going to think in this line. You are going to learn by going to different portals and use that in your school. If you need my help, I'll always be there with you. I'll share my number with you. But again, this is something that should be done. So you need to develop the test blueprint. So a key step in the process of operationalizing the assessment involves determining the proportion or percentage of items in each content area and cognitive domain that is referred to as test blueprint. So framing of the blueprint is done at the board level. Those who frame board level question papers, like I have framed question papers for CBSE, and a blueprint was shared with us. We had a team of people who framed a particular question paper. It's not me alone. So whenever I was developing the sample question papers for CBSE, I was given a team. In that team, we had meetings. We had a test blueprint, and we developed a test blueprint as well on our own and used that. But a central guideline was also given by CBSE. So, and when we framed the question paper, we also shared the test blueprint with CBSE. Now, how the test blueprint looks like. Now, so understand one thing. A test blueprint provides a tabulated list of following information about a test. So number A, which strand or topic or subtopic or aspect of the content or curriculum will be assessed. So you're talking about the topic or subtopic, you're going to check. Number B, which cognitive process or skill would be assessed. Cognitive process means in terms of Bloom's taxonomy. Are you checking remembering? Are you checking understanding, application, analysis, evaluation, or creativity of the child? Number C, what will be the item format? So how the question format will be, right? How many short answer questions, how many long answer questions, and things like that. Number D, what will be the length of the assessment in terms of items and item-wise time allocation? So how many questions are there going to be there on the paper? How many questions? How many 1-mark questions? How many 2-mark questions? And what time should be allotted for that assessment? Not only, a 3-hour question paper that we are talking about. If you're framing a question paper of, let's say, 30 marks, you need to understand how many questions to put in that question paper and how much time to allocate. Number E, what will be the proportion of A and B in the assessment? So A and B is the different, different topic and subtopic. And number B is what is the Bloom's level? So how many questions on, let's say, air pollution? In air pollution, are we going to check remembering? For remembering, how many marks are we going to give? For understanding air pollution, how many marks we're going to give, and that is the tabulated form of the question paper. Now you see over here a test blueprint, a very basic one over here has been put. So you have the content on the left-hand side, Krebs cycle, aquaporins, cell type. Now recall, you're giving 3 over here questions, 2 marks over here, cell types 5 marks. So total knowledge 10 marks. Understanding again 5 for Krebs cycle, 2 for aquaporins, cell types, you're not giving anything over here. Application again, Krebs cycle 2 marks, aquaporin 4 marks, cell type 0. And the total in Krebs cycle, it's coming to 5 plus 3 plus 2. So on Krebs cycle, you know that you're asking a 10 marks question. Aquaporins, you're asking 4 plus 2, 6 plus 2, it should be 8 over here. So it's an 8-mark question over here. And then cell types, it's a 5-mark question over here. So total, you're adding up to 25. So knowledge, how many questions? Understanding, how many questions? Application, how many questions or how much marks? And topic-wise, how much marks? You are getting the figures on the X and Y axis. So this is how a test blueprint should typically look like. And this is a suggested test blueprint by CBSE. Now you see over here, you're writing the class, the subject, the assessment, term 1, term 2, pre-board, whatever you want to put over here, you can put that way. Next is the main topic that you're talking about. So what is the name of the chapter? Subtopics, then Bloom's taxonomy level 1, 2 different levels. Now, to make this compressed, the other 2 levels have been hidden over here, but you can also put it like this: remembering, understanding, application, and then evaluation, creation, analysis. So 6 levels can be easily put over here instead of 4. And item format, like, is it going to be SL? So SL1, SL2. So it's selected response and then constructed response. Selected response is what? Selected response is MCQs, true, false, match the following. So how many questions are going to put in that way? What marks? And constructed response is where you're writing a detailed answer paper. So constructed response, short questions, constructed response, long questions, and then the PT, performance task. Now you see, when we put a performance task over here, we are opening the scope of putting something in the question paper where the child needs to do something hands-on. Now, we at times overlook this. We restrict our question paper only on selected response and constructed response. Performance task is not given, in a normally examination scenario. We expect the children to come, sit in the exam hall, write the paper, go home. Performance task, we normally we assess it before the particular examination in the class level while formative assessments are going on. But this PT can be a part of the question paper as well for your annual exam. I'll tell you how we can do it. Then item difficulty level, easy, medium, and challenging. So we need to have track of that as well. So how many marks or how many questions we are putting which are at easy level, medium level, challenging level. So this blueprint, when we look at that, we will get a clear understanding that topics being assessed, subtopics being assessed, Bloom's taxonomy level of remembering to creativity, what we are actually checking, where we should be focusing. Now, you remember we were speaking about that in the beginning, that jobs which require creativity is going to stay. Now, when we do that, don't you feel that when framing the question papers, we need to give more emphasis on questions which will check the creativity of the child, which will check the evaluation ability of the child, the analysis of the child, rather than learning, rote learning and understanding. So here on this particular test blueprint, if you develop one for your school, you will be very clearly able to see how many questions or how many marks you have allotted for creativity. If you're allotting a question paper where creativity questions are only, let's say 10% or 5%, then that paper is not a creative question paper. Similarly, the higher order thinking skills that you're checking, you will be able to see that when we understand how many questions are there taken together of creativity, of evaluation and analysis. So these 3 things taken together, what is the weightage or marks assigned? Then we will understand, are we really setting a question paper for 21st century learners, or we are still going to that level, we are checking the remembering and understanding of the child. Now, mode of test delivery. It's very important to understand. So assessment framework should specify whether the assessment will be delivered via pen paper test or it should be a computer-based mode. Now we are talking about SAFL these days. Registration of SAFL closed yesterday. 22nd was the last date after the extension that was given. And SAFL is a computer-based test because now we understand that when technology is there, we are in the 21st century, we are doing, a bulk of our work on digital mode. We are having mobile phones, laptops, tablets in our hands. We cannot just exclude all these digital resources when assessing a child. We are sticking to the age-old method of pen paper test that is in some way restricting the assessment process. We need to understand and be open for it. Now, it's very challenging because we have alone for CBSE, 29,000 CBSE schools across the country. We have places in a country where internet service is not proper. We have schools which are budget schools, not possible for those schools to provide computers and tablets for each and every child. But then there can be definitely way out, because who imagined 10 years or 15 years ago that the maid servant working in our families will carry a mobile smartphone in her hand when entering our homes, right? In earlier days, there was only one telephone that used to be there in the entire, in the entire neighborhood. But then, as days passed by, we have now mobile phone even in the hands of, manual laborers. So that is the penetration of technology, and in some way, we have to allow penetration of technology in our schools as well. So computer-based assessment is definitely something for the future, and the schools need to plan for it. SAFL is making the schools ready with the required infrastructure of at least 40 computers with internet basic hardware requirement. But 40 computers is not just the end of it. We need to, in the next 5 years, definitely make a big progress and jump towards something that will require the child to sit on the computer to give an assessment. If you see the joint entrance examination and the NEET, this is the basic difference. NEET, one single examination across the country on one single day. Joint entrance examination, multiple batches on a single day and goes on for multiple days. And multiple modes of question papers are set. Permutation combinations are done by the system, and joint entrance examination is being taken away by so many students across the country, lakhs of students, and the test paper quality is wonderful, right? The highest examination, if we talk about in our country, is definitely JEE and JEE Advanced. So that has taken the help of digital technology. So we should allow technology to come into our classrooms, and we need to decide on that, how to make it happen when we are framing the assessment framework itself. So will assessment require students to respond only to MCQs or write responses? Will they need to construct short answers, or they need to write long essays? Or will the assessment require students to respond in variety of formats? So when we talk about variety of formats, it's all about MCQs, about short questions, about long questions, about performance tasks, about computer-based tasks as well. Now, modes of assessment include research work, writing journals, making a portfolio, presentation, and other project work involving experiential learning for the whole class. Now, very slowly you will see that examination is moving towards a direction where the emphasis on one examination is being taken away. As you can see, the central government has already announced that from 25-26, 2 board exams will be there, and the national curriculum framework talks about multiple board examinations that can be taken by a child in a given year. So we are progressing towards that direction where one single test, pen paper based test, is going to be a thing of past. So if you do not start practicing that in the school level, then you are falling behind. You have to go, if not ahead of time, but at least move ahead along with time. That's very, very important. And if we require the infrastructure, the school has to plan for that infrastructure, plan for the mode of assessment, plan how these things can be done, the logistics of these things to be taken into mind, and arrangement be done accordingly. When we think about this direction, when I'm talking about, computers to be used in the assessment, the common thought that will come to everyone's mind is how to provide computers to 800 or 1,000 or 2,000 children appearing in the examination on a particular date. But then the question is, who told that these 1,000 children, they have to appear for the examination on one single date? We are keeping one thing constant and try to vary the other thing, it will never work out. If we need to be flexible, we need to be flexible in both directions. We need to understand that if we are planning to, for SAFL, for example, it's taking a sample of the students, because again, the infra is not there. But then in long run, you will see that SAFL also will be conducted in a way where children will be appearing for the assessment during different times of the day, on different days, and the question paper will be such that if a child has taken an assessment on a particular date, another child taking on another date, the questions may not be repeated. It will be an entire different set of question paper. And for that, we need a bank of question papers as well to frame digital assessment. And that is bound to happen. But right now in the school level, when we're setting a pen paper test, not going digital, even then, what we can do is we can de-emphasize the importance of one single assessment, and how to do it, we'll talk about that a little later. How to de-emphasize, despite conducting a pen paper test like an annual examination, still we can de-emphasize that one single examination system. Assessment and rubric criteria, this is very important. Both individual and group work is assessed, defined rubric and criteria. So when you're assessing the child, whether it's individual work or a group work, rubric development is very important. Teachers are trained in the development of competency-focused assessment tasks. Now, this line I have taken up directly from the SQA manual, SQAA. CBSE is conducting SQA reviews these days. I have myself reviewed a few schools as a mentor. So as a mentor, when I went there, I asked the school to, tell me what they have done to train the teachers in the development of competency-focused assessment. But then schools do not have anything, of that nature. So then we have to understand that how to bring it in. So we need to train the teachers to develop questions for competency-based assessment. Number two, teachers assess students on basis of predefined criteria. Now, very important for the teachers to define the assessment criteria to the children. They should not, be in the dark that what is being assessed and how the teacher is assessing me. What are the criteria of my, assessment? What are the scoring areas, or what are the rubrics based on which my assessment will be done? Teachers consult students in defining assessment criteria. So this is where, again, SQA is asking teachers to, collaborate with children in defining assessment criteria. Teachers were doing it alone these days, but children will be taken into account. We will have a discussion with them when we are defining the assessment criteria, the rubrics. Teachers hold discussion with parents to answer a set of questions, and how many items or questions will be included in each test. Factors to be kept in mind is the age of the student's familiarity with the item response format in the assessment. For example, if the child is in class 1, solving a match the following for the first time in an assessment, we need to understand that and allocate the time accordingly, because there might be a time that requires the child to understand what he needs to do, and thinking time is required, and then the child will figure out and do it. Difficulty of the items included in the test should also be kept in mind when you are framing a question paper. Now, you must have seen, even in the board examination, certain papers, I've been seeing the Sanskrit paper in particular. The Sanskrit paper ends much ahead of time. 3 hours time is given, but the Sanskrit paper ends within 2 hours for most of the children. Now, here we have to understand that, is the time allocated for the paper correct? So we need to question it. Now, whatever we are doing, we cannot assume and imagine that we are in the right track. Similarly, certain question papers, you will see that the child is not able to complete at all. So this test length, this is something, it's falling apart to some extent, because we are not developing the test item based on certain trainings that needs to be given to the item writers or question developers. these are just subject matter experts. Subject matter experts may not be assessment experts. So here we need to understand that two different areas are there. One is the knowledge of the subject and the subject matter. And the second thing is knowledge about how to develop a question paper, how to develop an assessment. Now, these two things, when a school realizes that yes, these two are distinct, two different domains, they will be using, different people for different jobs. Now, I'll just not take names, but you must have seen there are chains of schools in our country which have a resource center. And the resource center develops question papers for the entire chain of schools. And that job is not given to the teachers. Now, why is that so? Because these are the experts in developing question papers. These are not teachers who are teaching in the classroom scenario. They are developing and they're trained only on development of question papers. Now, when that is so important, and just because mine and your school does not have a resource center, it's a standalone school, it's not a chain of schools that we are working in, do we deprive our children from getting a quality question paper? That's the question. So my answer is no, we definitely have to do something about it. We have to talk with the, talk among ourselves, talk at the school levels, talk with the parents, talk with the children, and develop a question paper that will be, in some way developed keeping these things in mind, the time to be taken, the difficulty level, time given for that. And these are jobs of experts. So can we keep experts only to frame question papers? That's the second question that we should keep, start thinking at least. Next. In test length, Anastasia is, and psychologist educator, she tells that other things being equal, the longer a test, more reliable it will be. Now, here longer does not mean that you're crossing time and you're not able to finish it. What it means is that if you're giving a 3 hours paper, the paper should be long enough that the child utilizes all the 3 hours to solve that question paper and gets enough time towards the end to revise the answers. That's very important. And according to Benjamin D. Wright, the right test lengths translate to the clarity of the test's purpose, confirming the item validity, validate the relevance of the examinee's performance, and precise enough inferences on the decision for which the test was constructed. So Benjamin tells that clarity of the test, why the test is being taken, that purpose should be very clear. Item validity, the question is testing what it is supposed to check, and relevance of the examinee's performance, and precise enough for the inferences and decisions is very important. So test length is again a very important component that the educators need to understand and plan accordingly. Next, the process of item writing. Now here when we talk about process of item writing, very quickly we have to understand it has to be clear. We just read the red ones so that we can save some time. So it has to be clear, relevant, engaging, genuine tasks, and should be fair. Now look at this picture. Qualities of a good assessment: reliability and consistency, score distribution, mean score of the class, standard deviation, and correlation. Now, these are statistical terms that I'm talking about. Now, I feel it's high time our educators are trained in statistical terms, because when we are developing a question paper, if we are not aware of the statistics, we will not be able to do a good job. So to understand reliability and consistency, the educators need to be trained in statistical tools. So reliability and consistency then can be very easily, found out. Objectivity. Second, of course, the validity. Validity talks about the content validity, the criterion validity, the convergent validity, and discriminant validity. Now, just to understand this, I don't want to make it complicated. Very simply, validity is if the test is checking what it is supposed to check. At least to start with content-wise and criteria of checking. Number 3 is objectivity. It should not be subjective that, if I am in a good mood, I will give a different score, and if I'm in a bad mood, the score will change. The question paper and marking scheme should be such, it should be very, very objective. You will just see whether it's there or not and then give the score. It will not depend on your personal liking or disliking. Number 4 is comprehensiveness. To what extent the curriculum or the syllabus has been covered. Number 5, absence of ambiguity. The question paper should be framed in such a way that questions are not ambiguous. It's not left to the imagination of the child. It should be very, very clearly defined. Number 6 is preparation. Preparation both by the teacher and the child. You cannot put some questions in the question paper which the child has not been prepared for. If you're assessing a child, your question paper needs to be one that the child is ready to be assessed for. If the child has not been taught something, the content was covered in a hurry, do not put that in the question paper. And appropriateness of the time, we have been already talking about that how much time to devote, how many questions should be there, and what should be the difficulty level, what will be the age of the child. Keeping that in mind, we need to develop the time. And if you go by the assessment framework that is there in the CBSE website under competency-based education, you will see they have mentioned very clearly over there about the time as well. You can read that document, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get a better understanding of how to frame a question paper, how many questions, and how many minutes to be allotted for that. So, what are the features of a good test? It should be fair and balanced, wide range of difficulty, central to the aspect of learning in focus. So what we are checking, that learning that we are supposed to check, we are checking that or not. It should be interesting. And a good item can be justified for inclusion in the test term of the skill of knowledge that it measures and does not include trivial, irrelevant features. So we should not add question papers, questions or parts of questions which are irrelevant, it's trivial. It should always be focused to what we are trying to check and understand if the child knows or not. So validity, reliability, practicability, administration should be possible, administrability, comprehensiveness, objectivity, scorability, adequacy, simplicity, efficiency, and a balanced paper. These are the features of proper assessment. Now, here I am going to talk about item, stimulus, and context. An early step in the developing a good test and good item is deciding on the context and selecting or creating a stimulus. What is a stimulus? Stimulus refers to the prompt or context on which an item is based. So a stimulus can be a picture, a stimulus can be a case study, a stimulus can be an audio piece, a stimulus can be a video clip, it can vary. Now, so far in our classrooms, we have been only using, case studies and pictures because we are restricting ourselves to a typical pen paper test. But then think about this in a creative way. What if we play a video clip in the class or an audio clip in the class, and based on that audio clip, that's the stimulus, the child is asked questions and the child will write the answers in the paper or answer on the computer, whatever the child hears or sees as a stimulus. Just I'm giving a food for thought. How you can implement that in your school, you can just think about that. I have been able to do something in my school, I'll share that as well. But again, creative brains, you all are educators, you can go in different directions. But just remember, restricting a stimulus only in form of a question, pen paper, may not be the only case, may not be the only solution. You can give different types of stimulus to the child. So it may be a piece of text, a diagram, a graph, a table, a map, a chart, or a combination of all these, or a video clip, or an audio clip, or an activity. You never know what you're going to give, right? So all these different things can be given in an assessment. Characteristics of a good stimulus, again, it's substantive and worth examining closely. It's likely to be interesting to the target audience. So the children, the question paper should be interesting to the children, well written and well designed, optimally challenging, does not pose spurious challenges, put questions that will not really check what we are intending to check. It should be factually correct and offers opportunities for searching questions, and it should be self-contained. Question paper should not, require the help of some other person to explain what is being asked over there. It should be self-contained. It should be self-sufficient. When the child reads, enough data, enough information should be there on the paper for the child to attempt that question. So in lower grades, especially, the stimulus may be supported by illustrations in form of pictures or diagrams that make the context interesting and help students to interpret the context. So put more pictures as stimulus in lower classes, 1, 2, 3, 4, more number of picture stimulus. Definitely the question paper size will slightly increase. The printing cost may slightly increase, but the result will be much more valuable than the printing cost. Illustrations are helpful to students of any age with poor or average reading skills, and important support when domain being assessed is not reading. Now see this very clearly. What I'm talking about over here is we talked about the validity of the test. Is the test really checking what it is supposed to check? Now you are trying to check, let's say, if the child is able to solve a mathematical question, but the question is given in form of a paragraph. Now, are you checking the reading ability of the child, or you are trying to check the child is able to apply a formula of maths and solve it or not? But then if you're doing that and you're not giving a picture, a diagram, you're making the child read, you are testing the reading ability of the child, which we are not intending to do in a maths exam. I hope it is very clear now that by reading, making the child read and try to understand how much the child is interpreting that reading paragraph, we are deviating from our assessment objective. The objective is not that. Objective was not to find out if the child is reading and understanding the meaning of that or not. Objective was to understand whether the child knows to apply a formula, right? The similar way, when we have this picture that you see on the page, the child knows what this is. Yes, this is a nose. Now, if you write a question, write the parts of the body, the child reads and do not understand what it is. His reading skill is being tested, not the skill that whether he knows where the nose is, right? So this context of stimulus becomes very, very important. Next, points to remember is avoid bias. Be sensitive, and in item response format, constructed response and selected response has to be properly understood. Now, what is bias? Bias is something that you assume the child knows. For example, if I put a question on, let's say, celebration of Christmas, I say the child, write an essay on celebration of Christmas. Now, I'm assuming the child knows what is Christmas, which may not be the case. The child may be a Hindu child, and he or she has never seen how Christmas is celebrated. Similarly, if I say write an essay on Onam, now we have to understand what percentage of students know what celebration of Onam is. If we are not sure that most of the children or all of the children are aware of that particular topic, we should not include that question in the question paper at all. It's going to be a biased question paper. Second thing is sensitivity. We should not put something in the question paper that causes trauma, violence, abuse, or any controversial issue should be avoided. You cannot put something on the paper which is related to any controversy, related to something the child reads and gets scared about. You cannot write, put a paragraph over there which talks about an accident and a bloody act that happened on the road. You cannot put something that is talking about BJP or Congress. You cannot put something that is that can spur up a controversy as such. So sensitivity of the child in terms of religion, politics, poverty has to be kept in mind. You cannot harm the child or touch the mind of the child in a sensitive area. The question paper should be neutral in that way. And of course, the item format is very important. So item response formats, again, I'll not go deep into it. It's very clear. Constructed response type can be short answer type, essay type, and performance item. Now, this is something that we ignore repeatedly. Performance items we do not include in examinations, which we can start doing it. It is not going to harm you. It's going to give a great benefit. I'll tell you what I have seen in my school so that you can understand it's not theory I'm talking about. It's something very, very practical, and you can do it in your school as well. And it will give you a great result, I can tell you. And of course, the selected response like MCQ, matching the items, true and false, these are all selected response formats. So this we will plan in the blueprint itself. Then in the process of item writing, the long and complex sentences should not be there. Difficult vocabulary should not be there. Because the moment you put a difficult vocabulary, you are again shifting from checking what you're supposed to check and what you're actually checking. The next is unnecessarily complex illustrations and diagrams. So unnecessary diagram is often given a stimulus, which should be avoided. And items in maths, that involves a lot of reading. So a lot of reading in maths to be avoided. Topics or texts that are not accessible to the students. So certain topics which the students are not aware, those topics are not to be included in the test. And items that favor a particular gender, group, or community. So if you're asking a question which a particular gender knows about, let's say the girls are more aware of it, or the boys are more aware of it, or a particular religion is more aware of it, these questions are to be avoided. Now you see, in understanding questioning skills, here good questions are purposeful, clear, brief, natural, thought-provoking, limited in scope, that is only 1 or 2 points is checked what the child knows, and adapted to a level of the class, tailored to kinds of students in the class. So a question paper should be such that it tailors to different types of learners. Different types of learners are the ones who are, dyslexic children are there in the class. Children who are a little slow in interpreting and learning. These children also have to keep in mind, and then design the question paper accordingly. We have to make the question paper in such a way, give options in such a way that every category of child can attempt it. Next, preparation of the marking scheme is very important. So marks should be awarded in line with specific skill of the content assessed. So marking scheme should be, again, having a very clear sync with what we are trying to check. Marks should be allocated based on the volume of the content. Marks should be awarded for correct, valid answers. And however, the credit is given for valid answers which go beyond the scope of syllabus and marking scheme. Therefore, rubric should be accommodated for such answers. So we need to have a rubric very clearly, that based on which we are marking the child. And eliminate subjectivity in the evaluation. The marking scheme should be developed in such a way that it will not depend on the feel-good factor of an examiner or evaluator. Details about value points should be provided wherever required. No level should be defined in terms of rubrics of negative marks. So we normally do not assign negative mark for our examinations. So we are not going to pay much attention to this negative mark thing. But in examinations where we are assigning negative marks, there can be no levels to be defined for rubrics. The natural response expected from the students of a question in each subject based in different. So therefore, different templates need to be followed for each subject. So for different subjects, the marking scheme template can be a little different. Now, you can look at this particular question. A student observes the copper powder turning black after some time is given in this setup. Now, this is a marking scheme. Half marks for answer brown. What is being accepted? Reddish brown is accepted. Half marks is given for this formula. Half marks is given for, accepting cupric oxide as is reduced to copper. And all these points that we are aligning over here, you can take a look up at this, that how the marking scheme, what is the answer that we are expecting and what is acceptable. That is to be a part of the marking scheme. When you decide that, your correction also becomes flawless. Now you see understanding in the exam life cycle, specifying, setting, supporting, submitting, marking and producing of feedback, recording grades, and returning marks and feedback to the children reflecting, and again specifying. So this is basically an examination or assessment life cycle. So we have pre-exam preparation, we have accommodation, that is exam provision tailored to support different learners and diverse learning needs, and we have post-exam analysis. So we have given a lot of time to understand how the question paper is going to be like, how to develop a question paper, because that's very important. Now we are going to talk about some other things like pre-exam activities for teachers. So understanding students' need and learning style is very important for a teacher for assessing a child. Developing clear assessment objective, we have been talking about that. Creating diverse assessment methods. Now you cannot have just one assessment method for all. So creating diverse assessment method will be your key for success in your assessment. How many different types of assessment, or what is the flexibility you're offering to the child? And providing study resources and tips is also very important as a pre-exam activity. Study resources, tips for examination becomes very, very crucial. Now, you need to understand and frame an examination committee for the school with a controller of examination. Just like in CBSE, we have Dr. Sanyam Bharadwaj as the controller of exam. Along with the principal, please have an exam controller. In my school, I am not the exam controller of my school. I am the principal, but I have a senior PGT who has been given the role of an exam controller. And a lot of work that she is doing is focused only towards development of assessment and examination system, right? So exam controller, it should not be, the load should not only come on the principal. No, you need to delegate the responsibility and spread the responsibility. So establish an examination committee along with the controller. Let the committee develop terms of reference. Terms of reference is the entire policy of the exam will be defined by them. Principal can definitely pitch in, give vision, but let the committee design the terms of reference. Then give them autonomy. at times that is missing. The exam committee is there, they cannot operate on their own. Either the management or the principal is interfering too much in the job of the assessment. So what happens? The autonomy is taken away. They will not be creative. They will be doing a routine job, and variety will not be added. Flexibility will not be there. Then ensure that all arrangements for examinations are made by this committee. So examination committee framing becomes a very, very crucial thing. Declare the committee. It will be a very important thing that you not only have the committee, but declare it in your school website, in your school meetings with the parents. Then developing a code of conduct for the exam. This is the second thing that is very important. In the code of conduct, everywhere SQA is talking about, does the school have a policy? You are doing many wonderful things in the school, but if you do not have a written policy, it's as good as not doing it. So, everything that we do needs to be documented. That is the basic need of quality, quality of anything, whether it's a factory, whether it's a multinational company, or whether it's a school. Proper documentation of the policy and activities that you're doing is very crucial. And I'll tell you 4 types of documents that I, as a mentor, ask from my schools that I visit. First is a policy document. So school, does it have a policy in place? That's the first thing I check. Second thing is, after policy, the SOPs, standard operating procedures, step by step how to do a job. Is it written? Third, I ask about, implementation documents and checklist. How will the records be kept? The job is getting done as per the SOP or not? There has to be a checklist. Just like you see in a railway, washroom, checklist is there. Basin clean, tick. The floors mopped, clean, tick. The this WC has been mopped or not, tick. Soap is there or not, tick. So this is a checklist of whether policy is there, that this should be there. And then you have a checklist in place to check whether things are there or not. So similarly, policy document is important. SOP is important. A checklist is important. And then number 4 is action plans, corrective action plans, and preventive action plan. What if it is not happening? That also needs to be done, right? So this is gap analysis. So these 4 types of documents are very, very important. And these are your evidences. So in form of a policy, when you're talking about examination, school should have a clearly defined exam policy, which talks about arrival and punctuality of the child, attendance norms to be linked to the examination. We talk about 75% attendance for the board exam. Are we doing that at the school level? At times, no, because we yield to the pressure of the patient, the parents at times, but we need to have a very clearly written policy. The next is identification and materials that you need to have in the examinations. Silence and focus, question paper handling, seating arrangement, washroom breaks, leaving the examination hall, cheating and plagiarism, cell phones and electronic devices, submission of answer sheets. All these needs to be clearly documented, policy being made, SOP being made, and very clearly defined what happens if there is a deviation. This will help you in one way. If you're taking a step, a disciplinary step, then these documents are going to save you legally. Keep that in mind. You cannot take a step like, the child was found copying, and you snatch the paper, and then you do not allow the child to write the examination. And that's not what the school intends to do. But there was no policy. The evaluator or the invigilator decided that way, that the child is cheating, I'll take away the paper. And then a big mess happens after that. I've seen schools where this type of things has happened. The parents have come in and shouted on the teacher, shouted at the school that why did you take away the paper of the child? What is the proof? The child was not doing this. So a lot of other things were involved, and there was no evidence. So keep in mind, your policy is going to save you. Your documentation is going to save you. So if a policy is there, if a child is found copying, what needs to be done? That has to be a policy for that, SOP for that as well. And then all you need to do is follow that SOP. So a very clearly defined code of conduct needs to be established for the examination, not only just for sake of documentation, but to safeguard you. Next is examination schedule. Declare the exam schedule well in advance, because people need to book their holiday, plan. Ticket reservation should be there. So some school declare the examination in the 11th hour. Make changes. That is not advisable. So declare well in advance, and it should be a part of your annual calendar that you declare in the beginning of the year, if possible. The reporting time of the exam, the start time and the end time. Now, I've seen schools putting the timetable, exam time 10:30 a.m. The child comes at 10:30 a.m. If we have not specified that what time the child is expected to come, you see CBSE guidelines. When we go in CBSE guidelines, it's very clearly written, the gates will be closed at 10 a.m. and after which the children will not be allowed in. Similar things should be written in the school exams also, and we need to make the child practice. Because if the child is not practicing in the previous grades, all of a sudden you cannot expect the child will reach in the exam hall in time. I have seen in exam halls and center where I have been either an observer or a center superintendent where the child has come rushing at 10:35. I missed, the bus was late, I got stuck in a traffic, and different reasons were given. I have seen children forgetting that there was an exam on that particular day. The father who was supposed to drop the child forgot about the date of the exam, went off outside, the child was not able to be picked up and brought to the exam center. These things has also happened. So exam schedule has to be given and advised that it should be stuck at the home. Everyone should clearly see when are the exam dates, plan the family programs accordingly. Bell timings clearly mentioned. Reading and planning time for 15 minutes given in CBSE exams, often not given in school exams. Please give it. 15 minutes time for reading and planning needs to be given in the school exam, and I can assure you a big difference will be there if you give that time to the children. In school exams, often many schools overlook this. Next. Sorry, checking and storing of the question paper. Now we have framed a wonderful question paper with the help of your examination committee. But then how many question papers you should frame? CBSE has got 3 sets for most of the subjects, right? And here in the school level, I strongly recommend at least 2 sets of question papers. And make sure that only the exam controller knows which set of question paper is going to be given. Why is that? Because there are a lot of things that the school needs to be, very, very clear about. There are teachers who do private tuitions. There are teachers who do not inform the school, but they're still attached to the children in some way, help the children at the home. And these teachers, at times it has been seen, have given favors to the child out of the way. And that has come in focus. And what happens, when the school's examination system is questioned by parents, the school loses its credibility. So more robust the examination system you develop in the school, the reputation of the school will be better. So at least 2 question papers, no one knows which paper will come. The exam controller in my school has even been given the power to mix 2 question papers and make a 3rd set if need be. Next is the printing should be in-house or a reliable printing press. Make agreement of confidentiality. Why this one I'm talking about? At times you print it in-house, make sure the people who are printing, make them sign a confidentiality. It's a documentation as well. It will help your school be very, very systematic. And if you're giving it to an outside printer, make them sign, even on a bond paper, a bond of confidentiality, that I confirm that I will not, I will take enough care to ensure that this paper that you have given for printing will not be revealed in any way. And you need to have clauses for that. So this will give your examination system the faith. Now, why I'm telling all these things, what will happen if you're not doing it? The thing is, if you do it, the faith of the children and parents on the examination system of the school will be much more improved. So that will give your exam the edge that it requires. The dependability, the reliability of the school will increase. Now, there should be deadlines for submission of question papers, moderation, proofreading, and final printouts. This has to be clearly declared and printed and circulated widely. Next is segregate question papers and label it after it comes from printing. Properly segregate it. It should be like based on, if you're putting in an almirah, you should not have the scope of searching for it at the back, and you have kept some paper that is towards the end of the month, and you have put it towards the front, and the exam that is early, you have put it at the back. So that type of messy work is not designed. If you see CBSE, they have got these bags. This cloth bags are there and tags are attached. You remove the tag, you take it out and put it in another tag. So even if not to that level, what you can do is label these question papers date wise and keep the dates which are more recent front and the ones which are at the back towards the back. Then store question papers in a strong room under lock and key. A school needs to have a strong room. There's a question in affiliation bylaws. Does the school have a strong room? Many schools do not have it. They just have an almirah in a hall or a big room, and they showcase that as a strong room. Please understand, school should have a strong room. And if you make a strong room, it will only help the confidentiality of the examination system. And again, the faith on the examination system, not only by the students, but the teachers and the parents also will be much higher. Counseling of students and teachers is a pre-exam activity. How to look at an examination. You must have seen that Narendra Modi ji conducts this, examination program Man Ki Baat frequently, right? Pariksha Pe Charcha. Pariksha Pe Charcha is something that the schools are asked to see before the board exam. Now, this Pariksha Pe Charcha is for the board exam. We make sure that 9th and 10th or 11th, 12th children, they attend this. Now, Pariksha Pe Charcha can be done at the school level by the principal, making the child understand that what if I do not get a good score? How we should look at exam. So the focus on the exam, the way you look at exam will make the difference. Why do some children commit suicide after failing? And why do some children prepare again? Some children intentionally give up the test in joint entrance or NEET. They start preparing all over again, while some appear for it, do not clear, and commit suicide. It's just about how you look at things. The point of view will change your action. So it's very important in a counseling session that you change the point of view of children about exam. Fear should not be there. And it's the only option, only one chance. That thought has to be taken out of the mind. If I fail in an examination or my scores are low, my future is doomed. That thought has to be taken out from the mind. You have to give the child a lot of examples where the child can definitely do good, even if he does not do well in the exam. Countless examples are there for that. So you need to tell the child, take examination like a celebration. Take examination, like a fun, a festival. That's what will give the examination the real shape. And most important is, control what is controllable. Don't try to control what is not controllable. That is the key. So we need to tell the teachers as well as the children to avoid any stress, control only the controllables. Next is engaging parents and guardians. Communicating exam expectations and goals with the parents becomes very important. If parents are not involved in the exam process, it will lose its meaning. Parents will keep forcing the child to study in a particular way, which is not going to suit the objective and vision of the school or CBSE or the government. Soliciting parental support in exam preparation. What the parents need to do back at home to ensure the child performs well. It's not only the teacher who is helping the child. A lot of things depend on the parents back at home. So conducive home environment for the examination is very important. I have seen unnecessarily parents pressurizing a child and the performance of the child is dipping. I have seen parents quarreling at home before the examination day of the child, and the child's performance has dipped in the next day. So a lot of things the parents need to understand and keep in focus, even starting from the behavior to what is being cooked in the house. All these things will help, sleeping time of the house. It will help the examination system. Providing resources for parental involvement. So we need to give it resources, how to involve the parents, and we need to frame policies for that. Collaborating with families to support student success. So you need to collaborate with families. Now, I have been able to, talk with joint families at times, people who are staying in joint families. I have gone to the family, spoken with the family members to make them understand that what is expected from them during an examination period. Often, maybe the father and the mother is aware of it, but the joint family, the other members are not aware of it. And then the child's performance dips because of other members of the joint family. So entire family needs to be sensitized, and the school definitely has a role to play. Either you can be there in person or digitally. YouTube videos. When we were launching NEP, I remember a regional office of Pune, we designed, a few master trainers came together and we designed a module of few minutes for the parents. So the parents are also sensitized with NEP. So this has to be done about the exam as well. Now, while examination, what are the things that we need to keep in mind? So appointment of invigilators are definitely something that we need to do well in advance. Invigilators to be present 30 minutes before the exam. That's very important. Question and answer paper envelopes to be opened in front of the students and take signature. Now, this is very, very important. Bring an envelope, not carry a roll or bundle like a casual thing. Do something that should be looking good as well. It should be very, very formal. That gives the seriousness in the mind of the child. You are bringing a bunch of question papers rolled in a, in a rubber band and carrying it in your hand and just opening it and distributing. That's one way. The second way is carrying an envelope. All the question papers are flat, properly kept. It's sealed. You make the child come in front of you, open the paper in front of them, and it shows the confidentiality, right? So after that, give clear instructions to the students before every exam. What is expected, how they're supposed to fill it up. So clear instructions are to be given. Next, invigilators, frisking becomes very, very important. So board exam is asking for frisking. Frisking at school level is important. Why? You will say that at school level, what happens even if the child cheats. Maybe the child can get away with it, but is it possible to frisk every child? But if you're not frisking, in some way you are promoting, the child will not focus in your class when teaching learning process is going on, because he is pretty sure I'll cheat and pass. So as long as the child knows I can cheat and pass, why will the child focus in the this teaching learning activity? He will cheat. So more stringent the examination system is, frisking is, you will ensure better learning by the child in the class when the classes are going on, right? So invigilator should have non-threatening attitude. That is again important. The invigilator should not make children scared. He should be firm with softness. So either of the two things, very firm with softness, or there is softness with firmness. That should be an invigilator. Invigilators must not talk loudly. Coming and shouting, hey, everyone, look at this, shouting, it unnerves the child. Soft, pleasant tone of the invigilator is very, very important. Please ensure that in school level, you tell the invigilators not to talk in very loud voice to address the entire class. No mobile phones to be carried by the invigilator in the school. The scope of supporting students during examination must be announced and in advance. Scope of supporting students during examination, how much to support. Is the teacher going to read the question paper, explain the question to the child or not? Whether the teacher is allowed to explain a meaning of a particular word or not, that has to be clear. Otherwise, what happens? Teacher goes and explains the meaning, another child complains. That teacher helped that child, which should not happen. So very clearly, the scope of helping the child should be defined in the exam policy as well. The teacher will be allowed to explain the meaning of the question, yes or no. Teacher will be allowed to explain the meaning of a word, yes or no. Teacher is allowed to, tell certain hints to the child in lower classes, yes or no. So this is also very important that the invigilators must be aware of. In my school itself, it once happened that an invigilator went and she was a new teacher, was not aware of the policy. She went and helped a child in a particular way, and few other parents complained that, that why this teacher did that. So very clearly a policy has to be there regarding the scope of support. Next, encouraging collaboration and innovative way to start an exam. Now, what is that? I was talking about in my school, what I am doing. You provide a stimulus in the beginning of the exam. So before you distribute the question paper, what you basically do is you give, let's say, a biology paper, a bunch of leaves are kept in the room. Children will come, pick up those leaves, go to the groups of friends. You have not yet distributed the question paper, just for your, note. You have to note this, that you have not yet distributed the question paper. This stimulus, either a block of wood or a paper or, a leaf, whatever, a puzzle that's there, the children pick it up. They go back in groups, discuss about that, submit the stimulus, sit in the exam, question paper is distributed, and the first question is based on the stimulus that they just worked with. A group discussion with the friends to start the examination, and the first question based on that group discussion, what it does? It really cools down the nerves of the child. That phobia of looking at the paper and understanding that do I know the first answer or not? Do I know the second answer or not? That's gone. So the first question is based on the stimulus. So this can be an activity that you can do in the school before an examination, and that is going to be of immense help. It will help the child, settle down, be calm. When they discuss in group, their tension will be released, and then whatever they discuss, they will go back and solve the paper based on their findings. That will give them the confidence as well to start with. Next, unfair means. Now, when we talk about unfair means, levels of unfair means to be defined. Promoting academic integrity is very important. Encouraging ethical behavior, implementing the measures to prevent academic dishonesty has to be very clearly understood. You can see there's a news over here. Teacher in Haryana caught helping students in exam. There are many schools, in the board exam level, they help children, and this has to be very clearly be seen into with seriousness, and any method where cheating can happen should be prevented. During exam, strategies for teacher is creating a conducive exam environment. The room should be silent, quiet, conducive. No one is shouting, no one is threatening. That should be there. Providing clear instruction, monitoring students' progress. Are the children writing or not? if in case someone is not writing, observing the child, talking to the child and understanding why the child is not writing, this can be done. And you remember in the board exam, maybe if the child is not writing, the invigilator cannot do anything. But in a school level, if the child is not writing, the teacher can walk to the child, take the child outside, understand the problem, counsel the child, and bring him back to the exam hall if need be. This type of support will ensure the child who is sitting idle, not able to solve any question, something can be done with that child also. A timely support given in the exam hall will make a difference. So offering support and assistance in school level exam to those children who need it can be a beneficial thing, but it has to be in the policy. It has to be made, no, this has to be informed to all the parents and the children very clearly. Then only do it. During exam strategies for students, managing time effectively, reading questions carefully, focusing on the task at hand, and remaining calm and composed is very important. So we have to talk to the children well in advance about time management. So time management is going to be very crucial, and we need to make the children practice this. Next, catering to diverse learners, adapting exam formats for different learning style. Few learners are writing essay type questions. Children with dyslexia, can we allow them to tick questions? Can we allow them to, work and give answers orally, not written answers? So all this flexibility in the examination level may not be possible in the exam hall, but as the process of the examination, it can definitely happen. If there is a child, let's say, who is blind, in CBSE exams also what we do, we take the child away, make him sit in a different room. There's a scribe and the child reads, the scribe reads out the question to the child. So here the child is reading aloud. Other children are not getting disturbed, we are taking him in a different room. So similarly, children who need additional help may be taken to a different room. You can keep that scope open and the child may be, assistant in the examination to the extent of what the child needs. So providing accommodations for students with disability like hearing aids, magnifiers, all these things can be provided. Offering alternative assessment options. Not every time you have to assess a child on pen and paper. You have to frame alternative assessment options if possible. The more you do it on the school level, you are more successful as a school. The more you're sticking only to pen paper test, success is questionable. Ensuring fairness and inclusivity is again very, very important in differentiation. Leveraging gamification. That's another important thing that you can think of in a question paper. Make the question paper like a game. Levels, let's solve level 1, then go to level 2, then go to level 3. You can have snake ladder type of game in the thing as well. You can design your question paper in an innovative way where some sort of gamification is there. You can have points like levels. You can have, if you solve this question, you earn additional points. If you solve these questions, you earn badges. So when you do these things with the exam paper, creativity of the question paper goes very high up. Children have that feel of gamification and examination becomes fun. The same age-old routine question paper in the same format is going to be a thing of past. Gamification is the need of the hour. So make assessment engaging and interactive. So you have the questions, you write 5 questions, 4 questions solved. If you solve the 5th question also, you earn additional points. This will challenge the learners, the ones who are gifted ones, that I will stretch a little bit. At the same time, if you say that if you need a lifeline, you're not able to solve these 4 questions, this is a lifeline question. You attempt the lifeline question in case you need to get a lifeline. Means you're not able to solve 3 questions that were there in the option, solve the 4th one. So slow learners may opt for the lifeline question and still get some score instead of sitting idle. So this type of creative gamification can help the children. Next, post-examination activities for teachers, very, very important. It includes prompt grading and feedback, tabulation of marks as per assessment objectives. So tabulation of the score is very important. How the tabulation has to be done, it will be mentioned in the AOs. Analyzing student performance and data, identifying areas for improvement, providing additional support as needed, and digital records are being maintained. So these are post-exam activities that the teacher needs to know. And most important of that is analyzing the performance of the student, not only looking at the score and labeling the child that the child has not done well or the child has failed. You have to understand which areas of the question paper the child is not able to solve. And that can only happen when you have the blueprint in place. By looking at the question paper, the question the child made mistake in, you will understand the child is weak in remembering or the child is weak in analyzing. The child is weak in nouns or the child is weak in adjectives. So if you make that test blueprint that I told in the beginning, then you make the assessment and check the question paper, you will be able to correlate the performance with more objective things. Next, post-exam activities involve reflecting on the performance. Child should be a reflective learner, reviewing and feedback and corrections, setting new learning goals, and seeking help for areas of weakness. So more you reflect, the better you do in the next exam. Opportunities for improvement to be provided to the child. One exam, the child doesn't do well, that score goes into the mark sheet. The child hates that. Child does not perform well, give a scope of improvement. We do that in class 9th. We do not do it in other classes. Other classes make that happen. If the child is not performed well in an examination, give some time to the child, reassess the child. Remember I told you set 2 sets of question paper at least. So the second set will come in handy if you keep it well in advance prepared. The children who did not do well, want to appear for a second assessment, give that chance. Everyone deserves a second chance. It's not like, a sort of a thing that you do not get a second chance. The moment you tell that you do not have another chance, that induces nervousness, that induces stress. Moment you say that you have got another chance, it will give that, composure in the mind of the child. So this is very important. Next is gap analysis. Gap analysis is you find out where the child is and where the child should be going. And then you make an action plan according to that. So this gap analysis is again a very key component of examination. Assessment done, if you don't have a test blueprint, you cannot do a gap analysis. You will only see the marks. The child has got 40 out of 100. Why? Which areas the child needs to work on? You won't be able to give a feedback. But if you have an assessment objective, you have got the test blueprint, and in the tabulation sheet, when you are scoring, you are not writing just the total score, you are giving individual score for individual questions. By adding those up, you very clearly find out, is the child weak in the chapter photosynthesis? Is the child weak in the chapter adjectives? Is the child weak in geometry? And if in geometry, is the child weak in triangles or in circles? And that you can tell to the child, right? So this is very important that you do gap analysis. Now, as an expert of Six Sigma, a statistician, I recommend these tools that should be taught in every school of the country. If these tools are learned, analysis becomes easy and meaningful. DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. Now, again, I understand these are very new terms for you. It requires a lot of learning to understand these tools, but I'm just giving you a food for thought. These terms are there. You can go to the internet and check what these things are. I can conduct sessions for you in future on these individual topics to understand how it will help you. If you do not have a tool, how will you work? To make a table, you need a saw, you need a hammer, you need nails. If I tell you make a table without any tool, you will not be able to do. So teachers need tools, analyzing tools. If you're going for gap analysis, these tools you're not aware of, how on earth will you do gap analysis? So gap analysis, examination analysis, if you need to do, you need to know what is DMAIC. What is Ishikawa or fishbone analysis? This is a diagram of fishbone analysis where you find out the real problem. And then it's divided into what type of problem it can be: people, process, equipment, material, environment, management. So these are different types of problems that can be. Shortlisting that. So Ishikawa diagram, 5 why. To find out the root cause of the problem, you ask 5 whys. Why? The child has not done well in exam. Why? The next question, the child was not prepared. Why the child was not prepared? So like this, if you ask five questions, you will see, you will read the root cause and find out what exactly is the reason why the child's performance has gone down, right? Or the child did not attempt an answer. Why? Go for 5 whys, and all these 5 whys will go to the root cause. There is something called Pareto analysis, 80-20 rule. If you address, you see this diagram over here, this top 2 areas, if it is addressed, 80% of the problem will be solved. Other things are remaining 20%. So if we need to really make considerable difference in the performance of the child, focus on that 1 or 2 areas which will make a considerable difference. That will happen when you know how to do a Pareto analysis. That will help the child and the exam. Process mapping. Very clearly define the process and make the process streamlined for the performance of the child to improve. There are something called control charts. UCL and LCL, upper control limit, lower control limit. So control charts at time help the teacher to make the child, come within that range of average of the class at least. stop being an outlier. Then regression analysis. Regression analysis is you analyze, something like linked parameters with an unlinked parameter, something that is constant. For example, study hour. The study hour is fixed, and the marks that the child gets. So you compare these two parameters. Is number of study hours going high also relating to the increase in marks? Then it's a positive correlation. If increase of something is decreasing the marks, it's a negative correlation. And if increasing or decreasing of a parameter does not impact the marks, it's a neutral correlation. So by knowing regression analysis, we will be able to advise the child what are the parameters the child needs to take care of for the exam preparation and performance. And then voice of the customer, that's a survey. Post-examination survey will be of great help. Even CBSE conducts it. It takes a survey at the end of the examination that what was the level of the paper. In the OECMS, we fill it up. And this has to be learned from the children. We understand from the children in the board exam, how was the level of the paper? It's not what the teacher feels. So voice of the student is very important to understand what was the paper like and how the system was. The entire system, starting from preparation to the end. With that, we come to the end of this particular session. I do understand that we have taken a little bit more time, but the subject is such that it couldn't have been done justice by addressing within a time frame, 1 hour. I have spoken about something that requires maybe 2 days time to get a proper understanding, but I'm pretty sure after going through this session, a lot of new ideas will come to you, and a little bit of process re-engineering can be done at the school level. Yes, it's the month of February. We do not have enough time to do all the things that I spoke about, but whatever is feasible at your end, start doing it. It's said better late than never. So whatever things feasible, whatever point I covered, things okay, do it. So that's from my side. Ma'am, you can take over.
Thank you so much, sir, for that enriching, informative, and thought-provoking session, sir. You started with the types of jobs that will be available in 2030 and how to prepare our students. Then we went to competency-based learning, importance of validity, reliability, assessment framework, key stages in test development, test blueprint, and mode of test delivery, test length, and we had features of good test, marking scheme, and pre-exam activities for teachers, students, conduct of examination, post-examination activities, gap analysis. We got all that we wanted, sir. Thank you so much. And now it is question hour session. If the audience would like to ask some questions, you may raise your hands. And meanwhile, there was a concern raised by Shahnaz ma'am at the beginning. She said that sometimes students may know the concept and the content, but the student may not be able to understand the question. She just raised a point in between. It was not a question. That's the only thing I got in the chat box.
Right. Ma'am, this is a very valid question she has raised, because she's telling the child is aware of the concept, but is not able to understand the question. So as I told in my session, there is a scope of support that has to be clearly defined. Scope of support in the examination hall. So if a child says that I'm not able to understand what this question asks me, can we explain that question to the child? So, without giving the answer. If our purpose of the examination is to check whether the child knows concept or not the reading skill of the child, then definitely I think explaining the meaning of the question is not going to deviate from the assessment objective. So, in my school, I have instructed my teachers, for example, if the child is not understanding the meaning of the question, explain the meaning if need be. That will be really helpful. And even I've gone to an extent of making that in the scope of support of children who are normally under remedial teaching, that in case the child is not able to answer at all, these children can be given certain hints so that the child remembers. But these children, when we are giving a hint, we make sure that we do not, do it in a way that it disturbs other children. That has to be very clearly understood. At times when we are conducting assessment for remedial children, we can make them sit in different examination halls without specifying the reason why they are in that room. Just like board examination frames a roll number for the examination separately, in the school also, to ensure that there is no labeling happening and rooms are allotted to these children, special children or children who need special help, you can just frame a question, this roll number for the exam alone. And this children can automatically be sitting in a different room where they can be assisted with hints, which is not required by other children. So this is in one way, not giving the answer to the child, but making the child remember certain things. So this can also be a scope of support. It depends on the school. Again, if a school doesn't feel like, that can only restrict to explaining of the question. That's it.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other question?
I find a few questions in the question answer box. One is, during exam time, many students have shared they feel pressurized and they forget everything. Please suggest. This is asked by Mehak Pahelwani. So, as I told you, the activity that I shared with you, that in the beginning of the exam, if you conduct an activity, you give a stimulus, let the children go for a group discussion, and after going back to the seat, the question paper is distributed, and the first question is based on that stimulus that they just discussed a moment ago. It will ease out the nerves of the child. I have found this immensely helpful in my school. I saw the performance of every child increasing by at least 10 to 15% through this activity. At least I'm talking about. So this activity where you introducing a stimulus, conducting an activity in the beginning of the exam, then taking the stimulus back, making the children sit, distribute the question paper. The first question is based on the stimulus. That's of great help. Second thing is the counseling session that I told you. Make the child look at the examination in a different way. It should not be like something that I do not have a second chance. So second chance is given, ease of tension happens, right? So flexibility, second chance, counseling, these will help to ease out the tension. Next, I can read another question is there. This is raised by Professor Sharad Musale. What strategies can students of 10th board employ to manage their time more efficiently when attempting competency-based questions? Now, this is something that you need to understand, that when you're talking about competency-based questions, it's not only competency-based question, it's all about solving a question paper. Always divide the time in such a way that you can finish the paper well in time. So you know the pattern of the paper very clearly. Now, when you know the pattern of the paper, you have to keep in your mind the segregation very clear, that how much time I'm going to give for each question. And when it comes to competency-based question, if it requires more thinking, the strategy is very simple. First, attempt those questions which you are very, very sure of, and you don't even need to think to answer. So those questions you attempt first. Second, you attempt those questions where you need to think a little bit. But again, divide the time, and this time division can only happen with practice. So mock paper solving will give that child that idea that how much time should I give for this question section. And knowing the board pattern is very important. So discussion about the pattern, how many questions of what marks and how much time to be given for each question has to be defined. That's how it works out. Any other question if you have, please let me know. The third question is Reshma Dhanvi. Till which standard we should tell the meaning of questions? Doesn't matter. It decided, board exam, it's not written over that you can tell the meaning. But in the school class 8, till class 8, it's up to the school level, right? Even in class 9, it is up to the school level. So you can decide as a school that till what level you want to tell the meaning, right? So this is something. And if you remember, I also told you one thing, that make the question paper bilingual. If that is done, this problem is solved. In the beginning only, I said there has to be translators and independent translators. At least 2 translators are going to translate the paper and put that. So when you have a bilingual paper, you are writing, your medium of answering is English, but bilingual paper at times will help the child understand the question paper better. So that also can be done.
Good
evening, sir.
Do you want to ask a question? Okay, continue.
Yes, ma'am.
Please continue.
Good evening, sir. As
Good
you
evening.
told, we cannot judge while writing the essay and all that spelling mistakes. Then same things are coming for the question answers also. Same things are coming from the grammar also. So when the teacher will check for the spellings, because I am teaching 9th and 10th, and I saw so many students are making mistake writing the answers, especially spelling mistakes. They know the concept, orally they are very good, but while they are coming to writing, they are not able. So, what to do for this type of children, sir?
Yes, I understand your concern, ma'am. It's a very valid concern because, I'm pretty sure you're an English teacher, right?
No, sir, I'm a Hindi teacher.
Hindi teacher. Okay. So when it
Yeah,
comes to,
yes.
yeah, language. So you're talking about grammar. So it has to be a language.
Correct.
So as a language teacher, when we are checking, it's like, the spellings, the grammar. Now, my question is very simple. As I said, we have been checking like this for years. When we are checking a paper, we definitely look into the spelling. We definitely check the grammar. But my question is, as you said, are you checking the grammar of the child through that question, or you are checking a concept? That's the first thing that you need to answer. Are you checking the concept or the grammar, or both? So if you're
No,
checking
sir,
both,
when I am making now recently, because now I'm continuously referring the CBSE side and continuously taking this webinar type thing. So what I am doing, I will inform children before. See, I am going to give you 5 marks, one question, as maybe it's a picture reading and anything, but I am going to check your grammar plus your style, how you are answering. So when I am getting the chance, this type of answers, they are doing a spelling mistakes. My
Right.
concern is about the spelling mistake. How to
it's muted, ma'am. Your video is muted.
hello?
Yeah. See, again, as I said, what you are doing
I'm
right
not
now.
able to hear you, sir.
Not able to hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. I think some issue with from Madhu Rai's side. You can continue, sir.
Okay. So what I was telling is, as I said, when you are
I'm not
deciding,
able to hear.
Madam, please check.
you need to check your settings, ma'am. Put that in the chat box. So as I was telling,
No sound.
no, please, ma'am, can you just tell her in the chat box that it's a problem with the system? So what I was telling is, you can listen to this recording later on. That when you have decided on that, it's again your individual decision. That was the reason I said when you need to frame a question paper, it's not like one teacher framing the question paper and rolling it out by herself. Then what happens? It's only about you are framing the question paper, you are rolling it out, and it's your thought process. There has to be a team of framing the question paper. And then when you have an assessment objective, that time when you put it that way, your idea should be very clear in this question, what I'm trying to check. You said, I want to check spellings also, but why? If you want to check spellings, then you frame the question in a different way. If you want to check a concept, you frame the question in a different way. So when you're framing a question, you need to ignore the spelling for that timing. You are checking the concept of the child. And remember one thing, gone are the days where spelling mistake used to be vital. Why? Because in previous time, it used to be a handwritten thing everywhere. Letters had to be handwritten. So the knowing of the spelling was very, very crucial. Now tell me clearly, in this present era, we are driving the child should know the spelling. Is it really important the child knows the spelling these days because they're doing something online? The spelling comes as a suggestion by right-clicking or click on a computer. So spellings are going to take back seats. I'm again telling you, no, we have been doing it because we have been doing it for ages. We give importance to spelling to that extent. I'm not telling spelling is not important. I'm not telling that spelling should not be learned. But what I'm telling is, in case you are focusing on a competency-based learning, where we are checking the skill of a child, what skill I'm looking at. I cannot check every skill with one question. If I'm trying to do that, it's a misplaced question. So check one skill or max 2 skills with a question paper. Then you will be more satisfied. And then if you want the child's spelling should be good as well, you design a different question where it is only the check of the question paper spelling. For example, you give jumbled up spellings or you give wrong spellings and tell the child to correct it. There the child's spelling knowledge can be tested. Why you want to test it in a question which is more related to a concept? So it's all about segregating the questions, nothing more than that. I'm not telling spelling is not important, grammar is not important, but ask the question to check what you intend to check. That is the question of validity. I hope it is clear.
So there's one more question in the chat box. How can students remain calm? And I think you've already told that.
I have already told
Yes.
calmness will come only when the child knows that I have a second chance. Calmness will come only when the child knows this is not the end of the road. And the child approaching the assessment in form of games. Gamification, gamification of the question paper will be of great help. Silent reading 15 minutes before helps. Activity before the question paper attempts helps. A small, meditative time in the beginning of the exam may help. So all these things have to be done. And then if the child is still very, very, restless, a very composing attitude of the invigilator, sort of silent counseling in the exam hall can also happen to ease out the nerves. So these things have to be done.
One more question in the chat box. Is case-based questions part of competency-based assessments?
Yes, case studies are a part of competency-based assessment because it relates to the real life scenario. So whatever relates to the real life scenario is a competency-based question. But often what happens, we find the case study-based questions are there. Case study is given and the question is asking a question which is related to rote learning, or just seeing the passage, the answer is very evident. Then it is not a competency. Just giving a case study does not make the question a competency-based question. You are giving a case study, and if the question is really checking the application of knowledge, real life use of the knowledge, then it's a competency-based question. Just putting a diagram and putting a rote learning question is not competency-based.
I think there are no more questions. Salam, sir.
Yeah,
we
we can wind up.
So let me go to the last part of this session, expressing my gratitude. So I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed resource person, Swarup Datta sir, Dr. Swarup Datta sir, for sharing his valuable insight during this enlightening webinar. Thank you so much, sir. We, as I always tell in many of these webinars, dil mange more. We may require many more sessions like this. It was really good. Now, special thanks to Extra Mile and its organizers, Dr. Abdul Salam sir, Mr. Biju S. Pillai sir, for having this event so neatly done. And a big thank you to our attentive audience for your active participants. Your presence have actually made this webinar truly interesting and engaging. Thank you so much. Now over to Abdul Salam sir once again. Over to you,
Yeah.
sir.
Thank you so much, madam. A big thanks to the participants. We have to appreciate their enthusiasm, their passion for learning. We have, been sitting for more than 2.5 hours. And of course, Dr. Swarup Datta, it is full of passion. So he is ready to, give us as much as we want. But the enthusiasm shown by the participants is so great. Still, there are people listening to Dr. Swarup Datta. So hats off to the participants. Equally, a big salute to Dr. Swarup Datta. There was deep learning happening, and we got a lot of points to take away. And we need, these points to be elaborated. Though you have done it in detail, but every point is important. Every point seems to be very new, actually. And we need it to be explained so that it can be implemented. So lots of ideas given how, now everybody must have understood why we have, titled this session Mastering Exam Life Cycle. He started with the mode of, requirement and the mode of assessment and all, and he has given a very thorough understanding of how the life cycle of exams should be. Thank you so much, Dr. Swarup Datta. So this is what we always look from you. Thank you so much, and I think we need to have another session for that exam tool analysis. So I think we need to spend some time on that along with Safal. So please reserve your energy and time. I don't know how you find time because exam days. Similarly, Shalini ma'am also. Thank you so much, Shalini ma'am, and all the participants. Thank you for your cooperation and keep learning together. We are journeying together, and definitely we will become much more enlightened, and students will be much more helped, benefited. So thank you, everybody. It is time to wind up. Thank you, Dr. Sarup Datta, once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everybody. Shalini ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good night.